Rebellious Studio presents the Mind Body Podcast with your host, Maria Angelova. Hello, Rebels, and welcome to the Mind Body Podcast, your rebellious podcast with me, your host, Maria, where it is all about a strong body, calm mind, healing, and fully living. It is an absolute pleasure to have with me today Amy Odell of Jacob's Ladder, who is a leader and innovator into what we can do with our body and our mind to help those who have neurobiological development and delays. And Amy, knowing a little bit more about your work than probably the average person, it is such an honor to have you here to really share the story of what you do, why you do it, and how it can really make a life difference for somebody who can benefit from that work. So thanks for being here.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. Honored to be here. I've got a magnificent level of passion around this topic, and an opportunity to share and talk about it is just a beautiful thing for me. So thank you.
Absolutely. Well, so we're going to talk about a lot of things, but first, let's start with who is Amy. Give us 3 words that describe and like a little bit of a backstory of who Amy is.
Wow, that's always such a tough question, isn't it? But the words that come to mind, Maria, are in terms of I think personal qualities. I'd say diligent is up at the top of the list. For me, diligence meaning you set your mind to something, especially something that you wholly believe in, and you just stay the course. And for sure, I identify with that characteristic as my life has unfolded. I lack a lot of things in a lot of areas, but diligence is not one of them. So my son Jacob would say, when I said, "Can you, if I ask you to tell me one good thing about me, what would it be?" And he said, "Well," and he had to think for a little while. And then he said, "Well, you just never give up." And to me, never giving up means diligence. So that's one word. Another thing that comes to mind is tender warrior. We talk a lot about what it means to be a warrior in this life here at Jacob's Ladder. We have a beautiful team of people that show up here every day and give their absolute all, and make a decision to continue to ask themselves what it means to be a warrior in all areas of their life, not just here at work. And so one of the interesting kind of paradoxes of that, to me, as you define being a warrior, is that you can have such tenderness and such strength simultaneously. And I think that's just a really beautiful mix, especially for a rebellious heart, someone who wants to change the world, make things better. And I think if you've got that tender side of you where you're driven by just wanting to make a difficult situation better and create a better life for yourself and others, that having a tender quality, but also just being tough as nails when you have to be. So I think I certainly wouldn't say that I've always had those qualities either, Maria. I would say probably the tenderness, yes, but the toughness has really come about through a whole lot of years. And by the way, today is my son Jacob of Jacob's Ladder's 30th birthday.
Oh, happy birthday, Jacob! Happy birthday!
So I say that, first of all, to say happy birthday to my son, and second of all, to say 30 years of absolute learning and wonder and perseverance has taught me what it means to be tough when you have to be tough. So I think that matters, because sometimes in this life, people shy away from the tough things or the hard things and don't feel like they're capable of getting through it. And I think one of the most important things I've learned is that it has been those tough times and those trials and those kind of dips and valleys that taught me more than anything about overcoming, and I'm super grateful for them.
Yeah. Life has an interesting way of helping us grow.
Yes. Yes.
And I have so many questions already for you, but let's start with 30 years ago, your life changed.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit more about the beginning of Jacob's Ladder, because that is a very personal undertaking for you.
Yes.
That we started with seeking solution for something personal to you.
Yes.
And I'm sure even to these days, I can't even imagine how it makes you feel to see what that has brought to the world.
Yes. So 30 years ago, Jacob would have been born 30 years ago today. And at that time, I was married, and I also had a daughter who was 4 years old. And her name is Aubrey. She also works here at Jacob's Ladder today. But at that point, I was working at a child and adolescent psychiatric hospital, and I was the director there. And when I did have a high-risk pregnancy, but when Jacob came along, that first year of life showed me a lot about what he was going to need. His ultimate diagnosis was pervasive developmental delay, which meant, there were cognitive delays, physical delays, language delays. And, but I would also say he had an unbelievably beautiful spirit and kind of inner awareness that always came through no matter what the delay was. And so it was really that part of him that I would look at every single day, and just believed in my core that there was so much ability within him. There were just so many barriers to that ability being manifested and seen from an outward focus. And so I could tell you so many hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of stories about the process, but I, for the sake of time, what I'll tell you is that I one day dropped him off at the nursery school. He was about 18 months old at the time, and I was going to head over to work to the hospital. And it was a bit heart-wrenching every day I dropped him off, because he really just wasn't prepared to be successful in a little small, even a small group learning environment. He was still struggling with his physical capabilities, being able to sit up independently, couldn't really crawl on his own, things like that. So 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds were up and running around him. And literally, if he turned his head too quick to try to visually attune to them, he would fall over. And so this one particular day, I call it kind of the lightning bolt or my epiphany day. I had dropped him off. I looked back through the window as I was leaving towards my car, and I saw him toppled over. And I'll tell you something interesting. Every time I say those words, Maria, and I relive the looking through the window time, I feel that so deeply in my inner being. I feel what I felt when I looked through the window. I feel it just as powerfully as I did that day. And I know that was my moment of conviction. And so I believe moments of conviction really never leave you. And that's one of the moments that you then build your purpose on and fulfill your highest and best in this life. So anyway, look through the window, see that. And I had not even a pause of a moment that I doubted what I was going to do next. Did not debate it in my mind, walked in there, picked him up, said thank you to the nursery school, who they were beautiful, beautiful, beautiful people. Put Jacob on my hip, got to the car, drove to work, and I resigned that day as I'm holding Jacob. And I will tell you also that I did not have a plan B. Our family depended on the salary that I was making. And so it was a pretty bold move, to say the least. Bold, if not foolish. But, but still felt like the thing that was going to happen. And so started reading, researching, talking to people who I thought, and again, 30 years ago, there was not much innovation around neurobiological delays, autism, complex developmental delays. There just wasn't. There was nothing innovative happening. There were a couple of places around the country that I thought, wow, you're doing more than anybody that I've seen. And they were approaching things from a brain-based perspective. They were the early pioneers in neuroplasticity, which means the brain is going to change and develop based on the stimulation that it receives. And so I had some conversations. I went through some trainings. I read a ton of papers, read a lot of books, and had some really important mentors for me there for a while. And truly what the days looked like then, Maria, were take my daughter to kindergarten, come back home, and I worked with Jacob from about 8:45 in the morning until about 2:30 in the afternoon, just one moment after another of stimulation. And the stimulation points that I chose to do were directly correlated with, if there was a visual challenge, we were doing visual processing work. If there was an auditory challenge, we were doing auditory processing work. If there was a physical challenge with him not being able to move across the floor, crawl, creep, stand, any of those things, like we were just hitting it all day long, but also having fun a lot of the time, not every day for sure, but because it was hard work, but he was such a little champion and fun to be with, and he had such a great spirit, still does. So I look back at that time and just think, that was the soil for which we planted all the seeds that later became the IWBMC, which is what I call our model of care at Jacob's Ladder. IWBMC stands for interpersonal, because I believe the relationship between two people is the primary driver in healing circumstances. I think having someone alongside you who believes in you and sees you through the eyes of hope and possibility is such a big deal. It's critical. It's a whole brain approach. We look at the physiological essence of a person, meaning inflammation markers, gut brain health, those kinds of things. We look at neurodevelopmental markers that really takes into account how the brain is really wired and functioning, how the connectivity patterns within the brain are working. Emotional, behavioral, relational aspects, which for a lot of the clients that we work with and students, social, emotional, behavioral, relational is sometimes the biggest driver in the equation, because there's a lot of kids and young adults who are walking around plenty smart enough, right? The intelligence is intact, but the ability to really regulate themselves emotionally and not lose their cool, not shout, not, and worse is that's on the rise and falls into the mental and behavioral health bucket. So we just take time to look at all those individual aspects and then treat every single person that we meet as the individual that they are, knowing that what they need for their path forward is perhaps vastly different than the next person that we meet. But we've worked long enough and hard enough to develop such a vast intervention base that we have over 4,000 things that we pull from, and we can create a very customized program that really, when delivered, just like I did with Jacob in my kitchen and my den at home, right? It's just very intentional stimulation that, if done for a year or two in most cases, is really transformative and then opens up possibility for future placements, school placements, relationship, things like that really matter so much. So if you fast forward, my daughter Aubrey is here at the school and works alongside me to write a lot of the content for the IWBMC, and she's also in charge of our animal assisted therapy program. And Jacob is a teacher within the Hope School, which is the program that really works with kids who have emotional behavior relational challenges. And he's just extraordinary at it. So we've had quite the journey and consider ourselves to be very fortunate with the beautiful life that we have now.
What a life that it is, and life that, like I said many times, like touches others and makes such a difference for so many others who don't have resources, don't know where to go, don't know where to start.
Right. At the school here, so in Roswell, Georgia, we have a really beautiful campus, 17 acres. And by the way, I left out all the chapters of having nothing. So when I say nothing, I mean nothing. But it makes us so much more grateful and aware of what we have, that we have this absolutely beautiful spot after all this time. We have this farm, and we have land, and we have multiple buildings across campus that multiple programs are going on. And we have over 100 staff that just pour in every single day. And so we serve we serve over 100 kids here on campus on a day-to-day basis, really one-on-one, doing exactly what I've described. They also have group lessons and sports teams and drama club and art class. I mean, they have a lot of really beautiful things to complement, because I believe the one-on-one essence of giving someone what they truly need and then pairing it with the relational experiences, nature, time with the animals, all those pieces just makes this super robust and in-depth experience that I think is truly can be healing for people. So we do that. And then we have a program we call Community of Care, which is an outreach across the nation and really across the globe. We've served families in on every continent and supervise their care remotely. And the other really big thing we've done in this last year and a half is develop a customized software solution called Ahava that takes everything we've learned over 30 years, all of the evaluation metrics, the logic that's built into program activities, a training library, a data and analytics component. And we're making that available for other teachers, clinicians, therapists, parents, anyone who really just wants to dive in deep to transformative work for individuals that are struggling with complex neurobiological challenges.
Yeah. So, Amy, I work with adults, and most of my clients don't have neurobiological problems or issues or disorders. However, I do a lot of work that reprograms the brain in terms of how you move, in terms of how you think. And that's why when I was doing your program, I was like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what it is, right? Let's talk about the connection between mind, body. You also mentioned something that I also very firmly believe in, and that's the community. I call it the tribe, but the surrounding of people who encourage you and tell you, if you're somebody who has a lot of pain, who can't move well, sometimes people are like, I'm scared to move. I don't want to move. They go into a dark place into their head. They don't really enjoy fully life. They're kind of become isolated because of the pain.
Mm-hmm.
And the work that I do, again, it's mind, it's body, it's having that community of cheerleaders, like, you can do this, push a little bit more. Mm-hmm. Talk a little bit more about that and what's the science behind that, because I love that you guys always talk about science and love. And I think that is such a powerful combination.
Yes. So science and love. So the way that I define that on the love side of the equation, it really is about the relationship and what you would refer to as the tribe. We are not meant to be standalone, self-sufficient, disconnected in this life. And most of the time, I think what I've seen is people get to that point. Most of the time, there's a fear element to the unknown or a fear element to not being able to belong. And so we tell ourselves these stories and carry these core beliefs that are erroneous, that we're unable, or it's too scary or too hard, or when we get there, we'll find that we're rejected and we don't belong. And most of that is made up in the mind. And so when we look at the love side of the equation, funny, another interesting just happenstance, which I don't believe in happenstance, was that I was reviewing a workbook that our team's been working on for over a year called the Hope, Truth, Love Training Workbook. And it's over 100 pages long. And we don't just say the love side of the equation and use it as an empty catchword. We really believe that there's a way that you walk into a room and show up for people with the way that you see them, how you use your words, how you use your actions to either impact them, to move them forward, or we call it you've made a deposit or you've made a withdrawal on their life. And we never want to be a place that makes a withdrawal on anyone. We want to make a deposit so that you're better off when you walked into the room with one of us. And that doesn't happen by chance, I believe. I believe that that it is a lifelong process. And Lord knows I'm in it every day, trying to do my absolute best one day after another. But it's a lifelong process of just learning what that means for you. So when you look at, I would say, spirit, mind, body connection, for me at this phase in my life, Maria, I would tell you that if my body starts to feel off kilter, not at its best, lethargic, lacking in vitality, feeling pain, what I've learned personally is if I put all my attention on what my body's doing, that my body tends to continue to magnify whatever it's experiencing. But if I get quiet and I get real with myself first and no one else, just me, and do a check on where my spirit is, then if I take care of my spirit and I'm aware of where my mind is, my body becomes more of a reflection of the health of those two things. And that's not to say that people don't have car accidents and they don't, I mean, one of my best friends is a quadriplegic because he had a bicycle accident. So I know there's all sorts of circumstances, but I'm just saying in the average case scenario, there are, and it's hard. I will also say, if you're the one hurting, because I've gone through some physical challenges with my health. And when you're in it, it does not feel that great to have someone say, go check your spirit and your mind. Like, you're like, okay, well, I'm done with you. If you say that.
You know what? I do have to tell you, Amy, I tell people, one of my favorite tellings to people is your body is an expression of you physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Yes. So to your point, absolutely, you could be sitting crooked all day and then your back starts hurting 100%. Yes. However, there could be other things that are happening around you that are contributing to that back, neck, whatever pain that you've got going on, right?
That's right. That's right.
We're just not conditioned to think of our body as that vessel, as that treasure our body is constantly giving us feedback about our state of being. We're just too rushed and we don't pay attention. That's here, pop a pill, slap some cream, let's keep moving. I don't have time to check in with my spirit, right? And if you're not open to these things and you're in pain and somebody starts talking about spirit and you're like, I've got no time for this.
I got to
go. Like, I need you to eliminate my pain today. And like, I got to move on. And that's part of the work that I do with people, right? Talking about that multidimensional aspect of pain, that it's not single-handed, and how you take, how you sleep, what you eat, who you surround yourself with. If you're always around people who do withdrawals on you, I like that. I'm totally going to use that. Yeah, you're going to feel depleted, right?
That's right.
Absolutely.
That's right. I think you and I are very much on the same page about that. And so, I think about it. One of the things that I've realized too, through the years is there were phases in my career, Maria, both professionally and personally, where all the energy was into building methodology, and it was so exclusively in my mind at that point to help Jacob and then the others that started to come. But then as I started to really flesh out the IWBMC, the truth is that that model, that's just a humanistic model. It's a comprehensive, holistic, humanistic model, because we all are made of the same substance and the same parts and pieces of us, right?
Yeah, 100%.
And so what I found helped the most fragile, right? The most vulnerable and the most fragile, it's applied to those people in one sense, those individual in one sense. It needs to be very, very specific and individualized for them based on the challenges. Just when I said if Jacob had visual issues or like, it had to fit the need. But as we started training as a staff, it's really as we take our staff through training for the IWBMC, we actually refer to it as the integration or lack of integration of the mind, the body, the spirit, and the will. And so you could take that little diagram that we use for the staff and see that it's like a parallel version of what we've done for the individuals that have more challenge. It's just that there's the IWBMC is just so strategically marked out in metrics and measures and reason and logic and training libraries. I mean, it's just so vast. But for us here as practitioners on the other side, one of the things that we know is that, if we go out to carpool every day to greet the students, and if we walk out to carpool believing that we don't need to focus on our own mind, body, spirit, and will, and we think we got it, check, it's all good, and then we interface with a super fragile, vulnerable human being who has to be real because they don't have any option of pretending. They are who they are. They're in the midst of a deep, deep struggle. Their family is usually in a lot of pain because it's very difficult to navigate. And our team knows that when we meet them and intersect with them, and we call that a point of influence because we've been given a gift to be the one standing in the gap at the point of influence. And by George, we better show up and be the most authentic version of ourselves that's also working on our own integration of these parts of us, so that number one, it doesn't feel non-congruent, because that really bothers me so much.
Well, and you can feel it through, right? You can feel when the energy is not real.
That's right. That's absolutely right. And our kids, the people we work with, if parts of them are limited, I'll tell you what's not limited is their ability to assess another human being. Oh my word. From the youngest age possible, as Jacob started talking more and more, he'd be like 4 years old, 5 years old. We'd be driving down the road and he would come out with like these 1 or 2 liners to sum up an experience that we just left. And I just remember turning to him and going, good grief, And so from the time that he was little, when he speaks, I listen. And he's been here for so long. He's seen our staff go through training. He's seen staff come. He's seen staff go. He's seen people that just give. And he reads it. He reads the situation. And the same is true for the majority of individuals that we serve. They can spot incongruence or inauthenticity a mile away.
And something else that you brought up, which I think applies to anybody, again, in those situations you're dealing with, I do think it's amplified, but you have to keep your cup full first before you can overflow. And that same thing, I mean, I have so many people like, yes, I want to do it, but, I'm really busy and I have my kid and I have my husband and I have my job and I have my aging parents and and I just don't have time for myself. And that goes exactly to what you're talking about. You have to be whole first so that you can serve all those around you with a full heart and from a place of authenticity and truly wanting to serve versus being exhausted, snappy, irritable, and whatever else that might come with it, right?
That's right.
So 100% with you. Amy, what do you tell to a parent who is dealing with a situation? And I have some friends who have those situations, and I know they're exhausted, like they're drained. Sometimes they lack resources, sometimes they lack a support system, which I know, like Jacob's Ladder and all that you do, is a huge resource for people needing that. But what do you tell to those people as a parent yourself, not as an innovator, an educator, and as a professional, but as a parent?
Oh my goodness. When you ask me that question, what happens in my mind, Maria, is, and you brought it up about resources, and supports around. And so I was with a family yesterday that moved here from another state. Grandparents pitched in to pay for a year here. And they asked me that question, their little girl, who's just a little one, 4 years old. They asked me what I thought they should do next. They leased a house so that they could do this and just uprooted. And so my heart and mind told them the truth of the matter as I saw it, which is in 4 months' time, she's made some really remarkable strides. But for where she is at 4, if we could do another year of the work or another 2 years of the work, 2 years from now, in my heart of hearts, I believe she would be in a position of strength to enter kindergarten. But I also know that just because I know and believe that doesn't mean that that's possible for them. And so I say, here's what I believe that she needs. But I also know that your family has this set of realities that they have to work within. And it's important for the whole family to have a sense of balance in that. And that's the truth. And so for every family that I've met and interfaced with, there's not a cookie cutter answer. It's really the outer ring of the IWBMC is the social structure. That really means, how's the family doing? Who needs help and support right now? It's not just the person who has the diagnosis. It's the person with a diagnosis may be the one who's struggling the least in the family if you look at the impact of what everybody else is trying to do to hold life together. And so, because I love this work so much, my hope and wish is that we're able to help, because helping a family doesn't just mean let me burden you with a long program and tell you what your tuition is going to. It's not really that. It's like, let us help understand where you all are and take all of those factors into consideration. And how do we let mom get more rest? And how do we equip mom and dad to be on the same page with a behavioral plan, so that when X, Y, and Z happens, dad does this and mom does this, and the little brother and sister are confused. It's like, even just addressing that part for the family can be like a breath of fresh air. You know what I mean? And so I think every family has their own unique set of needs. And the we that I'm talking about is anyone in the field that has signed up with this as their purpose, to help those who are the most vulnerable find a path forward, that we owe it to the family as a whole to understand where they are. And then, as we're trying to help the individual that has a formal diagnosis, the only way to really do that is to consider all the other variables so that the family itself has support. And so I'll tell you one memory that always comes up for me is, it sounds undoable to do what I did with Jacob, all those hours every day and all that. And I don't think that's intended for everybody, by the way. I think I did that. I needed to do that because that was my calling. Honestly, that's how I feel. So I never think that a parent or two parents should sign up to do 5 to 6, 7 hours a day of, I actually don't believe that. I believe that we need to build a structure of support around a family, and then equip someone, a provider, a helper, a teacher, to be that interfacer and then give the parents the tools and strategies that they need to support that. But when I was doing that work, what I found about myself before I started really engaging in that work with Jacob, I carried so much, I would say, fear. I carried so much fear around his well-being that I was extending all that energy anyway. I just was extending it in a way that was non-productive. And I think that's true for almost every family that I've met. They put their child in the car, they run to this appointment, then that appointment, then that appointment, and then they try to rush and throw something together to eat for dinner. And then it's like life becomes like a blur. And that is no way to live. And so what I love to also look at in that family structure is, my goodness, let's assess where we all are. And to your point, when you said you try to help people kind of put the oxygen mask on themselves first and to keep their own cup full so that they can then feed other people, sometimes that comes with some tough choices. Like, you can't just pack it all in like the world's telling us we can, like listen to this much news and this much social media and this and go here and go there and keep up with that and that. It's like, for me personally, I've had to very intentionally decide, I have this many hours in the day, I have this many hours in the week. And the things that align with what I believe are my personal core values, and that's a personal decision for everyone, but I know what mine are, by George. And so to stay true to those, every time I either say yes to a phone call, I say yes to an appointment, a meeting, even say yes to a social event, just for fun. Like for me, I'm an introvert, so sometimes signing up for social events doesn't really fill my cup. It actually drains my cup. So I have to be pretty choosy about that. But my point is, there comes a point when all of us just have to make tough decisions about what we allow in and what we keep out in order to maintain just this sense of just inner integrity. And for me, the word peace is really important. If I start to feel that I've lost my peace, I'm no good to anybody. And so I do think it comes with hard choices.
I think that comes along, you're right. We are so conditioned to live a certain way. You know, kids have to do this and this and that and that, and you're trying to keep up with the Joneses, and there is no joy in any of it. That's why, you know, I talk about intention of how you live. That's why boundaries are so important, right? I can say no because I don't have peace. I haven't slept. I'm no good if I show up. What good would I do?
Yes.
So, Amy, we can talk for hours and hours and hours. For the sake of time, let's start wrapping up with telling us something, a piece of inspiration, a favorite quote, anything that you want to leave with our listeners.
Oh my goodness. Here's what I would say to that. One thing I love, and one reason I just am so grateful to you for inviting me on your podcast, is that I love what you're about. I love the message that you're putting out into the world, and I believe in it 10,000%. And you actually really exemplify your message. So speaking of authenticity and being congruent, like you're it. So it really makes me happy to be here. I was thinking this morning about the poem Invictus. I used to think that was, and I still think it's a beautiful poem. It's such beautiful writing, but it was about being the captain of my soul, and I thought a lot about that. And I think at this point in my life, the most important thing to me that I try to stay very grounded in, and I would tell you, there was a point in my life that I thought I had a lot of control, and I thought I was truly the captain of my life and the captain of my soul, and then life taught me something different. I do not have that control. And I can be the keeper of my soul, but I'm certainly sure that I'm not the captain of my soul. And so every day, I try to remind myself of what the truth of my core values are for myself personally. And I do the best I can to let my words and my action and my life be a reflection of that. And I certainly can feel it now when I'm outside of that. And all the things that I used to think I could control, I have now learned to totally turn over. I shouldn't say totally turn over, because we'll all struggle with that for the rest of our life about the total surrender, but I do surrender it to a sovereign God. Like, I believe that there is a mighty and holy power that doesn't need me holding tight, white-fisted onto all the things that are not controllable. And I'm called to do my best and to love God and to love other people. And that's my plan. That's my plan. I'm gonna keep doing the best I can with that.
You know what? I think life has interesting ways of teaching us. And I always tell people, I personally think it's inevitable to grow without discovering spirituality, because I am somebody who used to be very much of a control freak. And I've learned through life lessons that it's a perceived control. Mm-hmm. And that the more I surrender and, like you said, stay true to who I am, the more beautifully life unfolds, and everything just seems to flow instead of being a push.
That's right. That's right.
All right, Amy, I have to ask you, what's your definition of rebellious?
My definition of rebellious, I think my definition of rebellious, and I think the words rebellious heart, but rebellious to me means that there's something within you that sees something better, better and higher, and that you are compelled, convicted to be a part of moving that forward, and that you care more about the outcome of the better than you do about the acceptance or approval of people around you. Which, I mean, if you care more about that, you'll never be truly a rebel, because the moment you try to be a rebel, you're going to get a lot of noise from the outside.
Yes, you will. I can attest to that.
I think that at the core of it, a rebellious heart is rebellious because there's something better, and that we're not rebellious to just hear ourselves talk, but because we believe so strongly that there is a better way, and we're going to stay steadfast in that. So
thank you.
That's what I think.
I like that definition. And Amy, let's tell people where they can find you. If they would like to get in touch, how can they follow your journey, what you do? How can they connect with you?
Jacob's Ladder, jacobsladderschool.net is our website. Actually, I want to make sure that I give you all the correct information. There's LinkedIn, there's an Instagram, there's a Facebook, and I'm not the holder of that information on a day-to-day basis. So if I can, I'm going to circle back and make sure that I get all the right contacts.
Yeah, that sounds like a plan. Amy, I am truly grateful to you for sharing your journey with authenticity and vulnerability. And my hope is really that others who are listening and who might be in a tough situation are inspired, and this encourages them to take steps to move forward and to know that there are people who can offer love and support and resources and be there for them. Again, thank you so much for making the time to be here. I know you're on a busy schedule and you've got a lot to do, so thank you very much. And I know we're going to be talking more. Yes. I
look forward to it, Marie. I do want to stay in touch, and I truly am honored to have the conversation with you. And you keep doing the great rebellious work that you're doing. I have a lot of respect for it.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Do let us know if you have any questions. And if not, tune in next time. Make sure you stay rebellious. See you next time. Can't get enough of those rebellious conversations? Do make sure you subscribe, like, and share with your friends.